Get this show on the road then. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name's Chris Merritt. I'm here to MC this event, and let me tell you right from the get-go, strap in. This is going to be some really interesting discussion. Ivan's done a deep dive here, and he was just previewing it to me, and holy cow. So let's get started. Before we get into the event itself, just a quick advertisement. Swear we'll keep this to a limit. We are going to be at RSA next week. We'll be in booth 6585. If y'all are going to be there, come on by, meet the team, meet Ivan and the other execs, and be sure to join us at our cocktail party that's co-sponsored by D3, Elastic, and Microsoft Security. So that's one of two brief adverts in this event. So we're ready to move on to the event itself. And like I say, strap in. Ivan, go ahead.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone. By the way, guys, mention from where you connected on LinkedIn and here on Zoom, just to make sure that we have like the full crowd. And if you know somebody else who potentially might be interested in that research, just share the link right now with them. And then if you're interested in a full-size white paper about this research with all the statistics and the data sets as well, sign up by the link at the bottom, wallarm.com/webinars/25 years API security. We will send you all the data by request. So what the main objective for this job? So first of all, we spent so much time for this, and I'm proud that we finally get it done. So it takes a lot of time, more than I expected for sure. The main idea was, first of all, to collect the most complete set of API security bulletins, bug bounties, reports, CVEs, exploits data over the past 25 years since the first exploit actually was detected. It's very important that, first of all, as a cyber vendor, specifically with a focus on API security, we have to know everything, right? We have to look at historical data, we have to look at exploits, and we have to count them all, we have to score them all and use this data. The second thing was to basically, the second objective, right, to statistically prove or refute if the ChatGPT like 3.5 or 4 or whatever can be used for CVEs, CVE, OWASP API, whatever classification is scoring. Right, we need to score exploits. We have to be really fast. We have to understand what's going on before attackers can write like exploits and run them in the wild. And the CVE actually happen, we have to know what's there and be able to react fast. So to do so, we definitely have to use tools. The other thing was to analyze this the most complete API security database. Basically, we assume that we grab basically every single API exploit existed in public, right? With statistics and ChatGPT to make sure that our data is clear and correct, and the statistics and results and insight is also clear and correct, regardless of using AI, right? We shouldn't use tools without the proof. And that's why we apply statistics first and then use tools, right? ChatGPT or others. And then get some insights for sure about trends in API security, API protocols, legacy web presence, and stuff like that. And also as a point number 5, objective number 5, to get kind of comparison table between OWASP Top-10, OWASP API Security Top-10, and what we can get out of the list. As a small spoiler, we make this ChatGPT Top-10 list, which, as it for me, looks much better than the original OWASP. We will see it in the end. And again, don't forget to put your email by the form here to basically receive data sets and everything. So there is nothing hidden here. We can share everything about this research. So before we start, I just have to ask you guys, how new is the API security space at all? Or in other words, when did the API exploits start to show up? Probably you already know an answer, specifically if you participated the previous event last year, about 10 years overlook, here's the 25 years. And assume that, by the way, drop your comments on LinkedIn and also on Zoom. Here, I think that it's very interesting thing though. And I assume that you get an answer, at least if you look at the event, and we mentioned 25 years, it should be like 25 years or older, right? So the first dinosaur that I was able to find was actually in 1998 with a CVE number 1999. If you remember the time, CVEs numbers actually applied a bit later rather than official exploits. That's why the number not rely and not equal to the year itself. It's a path traversal issue, also related to authentication of direct file access, also known as path traversal, directory traversal in IREX. If you remember what the IREX is, it's not. I mean, you just like younger than me, which is good. Okay, let's dig into it. What we will analyze here? As I mentioned before, basically all the data, about 12,000 CVEs and bug bounties reports and exploits that we're able to find. We start in 1998, and the latest data that we grab is basically April 15, 2023, like last week. And thanks vulnerabilities.com for the data. They have the most complete database and an API access to that, which we really like. Let's start digging into it. So the first insight that we instantly bring is, first of all, API security is a growing trend. We know that by Gartner, we know that by many other research, but actually nobody but us can show why and prove this by the data we have. The thing is here, we have plus 57% in 2029 of API exploits and bug bounty reports to the previous year. And you can find that by the chart on the right. We got the kind of like downgrade in 2029 and a huge spike in 2022 and in 2020. The most important data points here is overall the jump between 2019 and 2020 was about 100%, and also the same jump happened in 2013 to 2014, basically 127%, which is a good thing to consider about what specifically happened this year. So if you know an answer, mention to comments. If you don't know an answer, feel free to put some assumptions. And overall, we have basically an industry with 20 to 40% year-over-year growth, stable growth since 2014 to 2019, and last year everything started to accelerate, which is a good sign for us as a cyber company with a focus of API security. It means that we have more researchers with a focus on what we can do, and it means for us that we can basically build better tools because we have more data. About 6 exploits, API exploits a day in 2021 to compare with 4 exploits and bug bounty report a day averagely in 2021. So 4 a day, it's a lot. If you will spend, let's say, 1 hour plus couple of minutes for one exploit, it's a full-time job just to analyze them daily, right? The other insight that we instantly bring out of this, and the main idea was to compare APIs, right? Because again, we all know that there is an OWASP Top-10 and also an OWASP API Top-10. The main idea was to compare how many web exploits we have and compare that with an API exploits and API things. And then we did this results. So at the top chart here, you can find the percentage of API security issues of the web issues. You can find this percentage is growing. That means that we see more and more API exploits out of this, all the web exploits, about 88% now, to compare with, let's say, less than 4% in 2020, more than double a year in 2 years. And then we have overall diagram that give you some kind of historical data grouped by years about the web exploits and API exploits, again, based on CVE data and bug bounties. You can find here a spike that happened with web roughly in 2007, and then it went down. And then we have a constant increase in the amount of API issues since basically 2007, right? And nowadays, we have about like 2,000 plus issues a year to compare with, let's say, 30,000, right, of this web exploits. It's about 8%, 7.5%, but it grows faster. And just to give you some sense, for let's say one API exploit, we have about 13 web exploits not related to APIs at all, like web apps and stuff, which is a great thing. However, our job here is to drill down inside this API exploits and get what's inside, so which kind of API protocols attacked, which kind of attack types used, which kind of root causes of that, and basically how to protect and from where we have to protect them, right? And this is probably my favorite part of this job. We were able not only to find this exploit, but also categorize them by different things. And we see this, the total domination of REST, basically 10x more than others, rather than legacy, for instance, APIs like Ajax, right? Which is still an API and definitely more than others. So here you can see first of all, and be aware, here's the log scale, right? Logarithm scale on the left side, just to make things visible, right? We have just a few exploits for gRPC a year and about like, let's say 50 GraphQL exploits, but it's stable and it's definitely visible on this. Legacy APIs almost flat, right? They're still there with up and downs, but it's still number 2. And SOAP, as you can see here, as it started back in, let's say, 2011, right? We still have almost the same amount of like a couple of dozens of them, a few dozens a year, and it's very stable. Why? Because SOAP is so widely distributed. We have a lot of components based on this protocol and a lot of tools using them. And again, like gRPC seems like some kind of new thing started back in 2019, if we will include 17, and GraphQL started the same year. So overall, 2017 is official year where non-REST API security is started, non-legacy, and that's something that definitely you have to consider when it's to APIs. However, it's not enough. It's just not enough to make to take any actions. REST seems like a lot, but what's inside this REST? We decided to basically analyze the REST class, the REST exploits, and get what's there. And we instantly bring this point. We decided to, okay, let's dig into REST APIs and check how we can split them. And we found a way which is 100% clear and 100% understandable for developers. We called it cookie split, right? If the REST API supposed to get cookies for user authentication, right? It's basically legacy web or legacy REST API. Why? Because the initial thing for APIs is use them for automation. And if it's like cookie-based sync or cookie-based authorization, this sync itself introduces a bunch of new ways of attacks, including XSS and CSRF and stuff like that. That's why it's better to split than REST by 2 classes. And we now have an idea how to do that. And by the way, we did that. I will a bit later explain how. For now, we just have to rely on my word here. It's 20% of all this REST exploits specifically used, basically should be considered as legacy REST APIs with browser, built for browser with cookie-based authentication. So it's 20% of them. That's why this chart of like domination of REST also should be considered as a part of legacy. Every basically 5th REST exploit at this chart, it's still legacy exploit that almost equal to like AJAX in terms of like client-side attacks, right? And that's another one thing that that we have to actually highlight here. Client-side attacks exist for APIs if this APIs use cookies for authentication, because this client-side attacks basically abuse this browser cookie features and ability to send requests across the main. Okay, then the most interesting part, we need more data, we need more data points, we need more than we can extract just by original reports, right? Just by original CVEs data. To do so, we decided to apply AI. But before apply AI or even ChatGPT, if it looks very promising, even we have to make sure that the tool is correct and we can apply that and result is statistically proven. So we start with this point, run the first test for ChatGPT called AI test 1 versus random data. The whole idea about this test was really simple. Run 100 tests for the same exploit, like CVE, whatever, and then check how close these results that ChatGPT generates to score this exploit by CVEs distributed. If they distributed well, it's okay. If not, compare with random distribution and make sure that we even can use this or not. So we did the first test. That was the main idea, get statistically valuable amount of CVEs, like let's say 100 of them out of our database, out of 12,000, and run 100 times each for tests, right, for this 100 random peaks. Calculate standard deviation and some other data if needed, but believe me, so that's you will get by standard deviation that we don't need to do that. And then decide about scoring. Can we apply that or not? So what we did here, and it's very interesting thing, we don't need to apply any criteria, whatever, like the Kolmogorov-Smirnov criteria or whatever criteria needed there. it's really easy to get that the data is correct and non-random because the standard deviation at the median, like 80%, is about 0.55. 0.55 out of 10 of like from 0 to 1, right, of the CVEs, that's a lot. And just by the way, my standard deviation when I score exploits by CVEs version 3 is about 1.8. So this tool is basically 3 times more accurate than I can, which definitely convinced me to use the tool and continue to do that. And again, like 5% of the cases out of 100 run, the tool generate exactly the same score. 80% of the cases, the deviation between the score is about 0.4 to 1. And 5% of the cases, it's from 1.1 to 1.45. But even in this case, I mean, this tool can score, when we use it, like we tested this 100 times for 100 random exploits of the database of 12,000, right? The score basically produced this, the tool produced the score in a very right way, right? With the highest of 1.45 deviation from the previous results, which is like, I mean, unbelievable, right? It's definitely how it should be. Less than 1, it's more than I can do. Then we're on the second test, with basically we can now realize that the score is correct. Okay, but does it mean that this tool scored it correctly? We know that the score produced, let's say, consistent score among the CVEs, but we have to check if the score is correct. And in this case, we have to compare the scoring with the real CVE data, the basically source of the CVEs score made by researchers, right? To do so, I just show you one example. Here is the one random peak out of 100 runs that I run. But, and again, like you can easily reproduce that at the model of ChatGPT 3.5 turbo, it's CVE 2017 to 2343. And the standard deviation here is 0.5. Again, with the regional, not between their runs, but with the regional CVEs. And in 71% of the cases that I run, the tool gave me 9.8, basically exact match with the regional score. And here you can find this runs on a diagram. It's just unbelievable because, again, we can use the tool and the tool can score as good as the original thing. However, I can believe in just one run, right? I run so many runs, I run more than 100 runs and get these pictures that basically we can split between 2 groups. The group number 1, the results of ChatGPT is very consistent, but they shifted. Basically, they score, they apply higher score rather than the original one. And another one group, it's basically where the match is exact or almost exact, right? So basically the tool generates the same results than the original thing. That's what I get. And then you can find the histogram. I don't want to apply more statistics than I should do. Just look at the histogram on the right. You will find that the difference, right, the 0.0 means 0 difference between original CVEs score and ChatGPT CVEs score, right? It's almost 0. And here we have the list of as a range of -3 to 4.5 as a highest and lowest thing. And because of this, chart basically moved to the positive side on this x-axis. You can find more data on the right than data points on the left. It's perfectly aligned with an assumption that we made instantly when we look at the data set that ChatGPT usually score exploits, specifically API exploits that we tested them on, let's score more, 1.52 probably scoring points more than original CVEs. And to be completely honest, based on the data that I looked manually, I more rely on ChatGPT data than an original thing. If you ever try to run like threat intel or even like collect data from CVEs, you will find, and you know that, right, that usually we see less, basically lower CVEs scores than it's in real, and then in whatever months or 2 or later, this original data also rescored and goes up. Exactly the same as CVEs ChatGPT, which is awesome. And then just to finalize this CVEs job, right? I just mapped all these runs that I run. This is across all the data set, 12,000 exploit that I scored. In 80% of the cases across the data set, it's just equal to original, right? 80% of the chance across all the data set, not 100 runs of 100 things as I did here, but it's overall data that I collected, right? And again, I run test runs for each exploit here. In 80% cases, it's just equal. For 20% of the data set, here is a difference in percentage between it's a stack diagram, right? Between this original and not. Very few times we see 100% different. It means that, for instance, if an original score of 5, the ChatGPT gives 10, right? 100% difference. So usually the difference is about like 30%, 50%. Only in 20% case, it's just awesome. And again, once I started to look at these exploits, I was more basically close to ChatGPT rather than the original score. Because of many reasons, but you just have to count that ChatGPT knows so many data and so much more than you can know about this exploits itself, and also products they use, and also platforms and everything. Every single time when you see kind of like label inside an exploit, that label means a lot for ChatGPT, even if you're doing this job for a while. So I mean, I don't think that anybody can score at 80% chance at this 12,000 database, right? I can't. Okay, the next one, the most important part, which basically moves us to the right direction about scoring, and the whole idea about this research, get statistically proven classes and focus and risk model, right, that can help us to work with this API exploits. Just a couple of seconds. I have to drink my coffee. And Chris, if you have any questions or unresolved things, issues, let's just walk through that.
Yeah, right now, no questions that I'm seeing. So out in the audience, if y'all have questions as Ivan's going through this, go ahead and put them in the question box if you're in Zoom and however LinkedIn does it. Sorry, I'm not on LinkedIn at the moment. I think the other thing that I just want to make sure everyone is aware of is, of course, we will be providing you with the slides and the recording so you can re-listen to this. This is a lot of information that Ivan's going through, and I sympathize with our audience trying to absorb it all. So make sure you're asking your questions as we go along, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, let's continue. Okay, CVEs scoring is okay, but it's just a number. It can help us with the risk model and can help us to get what's an impact and even more, but it will not help us to build a kind of top list of risks, right? To do so, we have to categorize what the root cause of this issue. And to do so, basically the most accurate way is to assign and categorize an exploits we have, the data we have, with CVE. The CVE is a common weakness enumeration thing that the database and the class map, the metrics of things. Classes are interconnected, weaknesses interconnect. They could be parents of child of each other, but this is the most, let's say, complete list of issues we know, and definitely all the other things rely on them. If it's like the CAT8 or OWASP, they all mapped on CVE. And then the goal here was to map and the score by CVEs all these API exploits that we collected, which we believe the most complete database ever. So we count every single exploit since 1998. And I did this test. Here is a screenshot just to give you some sense how the tool is good. First of all, I just copy and paste this description of the exploit and this test. So I asked ChatGPT to list all applicable CVEs with their likelihood from 0 to 9 with a step of 1 for this issue, and also categorized by API type. But what's most important, reply to me with the CVEs with likelihoods in a way of in the form of JSON to then be able to parse that. And here is the response, right? You can find it here that, and again, I just use ChatGPT here with the UI to put some screenshots. I definitely did that through an API and then parse this data. Couple of things here. So at the first glance, you may see DDoS to DDoS and then say use after free to use after free, because for the particular exploit here, we do have this CVEs for DDoS and use after free. But on the top of that, you also see the likelihood 6, the basically access control issue. And it's different CVE, right? 732 that directly address to incorrect permission assignment for the critical resource. And the critical resource is a socket, right? It means, even at this example, when you probably might see, like, let's say, I can do that by regex. I can put as many regex for things like UAF and DDoS and try to map CVEs. You can, but you can't do things like this by regex when the likelihood is strong enough to consider that it's still a part of that. And what's most important, this one is just proof that the ChatGPT know what this exploit about, and also know all the context about CVEs, common weakness information form, and can match them correctly by the real use case. Here is not only DDoS or use after free, but also an ability to take a control on the socket that should be protected, right? And we have this in correct permission stuff, which is awesome. I mean, that's definitely something that we have to consider. Again, just one random peek, but as I said before, our main job was to make statistical proven data. That's why we did more than one. So we had this.
Oh, Ivan, before you move on, I just want to reiterate this point. So here we are. We have a known vulnerability, and we're using ChatGPT to tell us what the CVEs that should be associated with it are. Now, as Ivan said, you can regex that and you'll get what's known. What ChatGPT has done here is to expand our understanding of what the weakness is associated with this particular CVE. What this then means from a defend perspective is that you now have better and more information on what you need to be defending against to protect against this particular CVE. So, you know, what it's doing is giving you breadth and depth in your defenses. So that's just wanted to make sure that we're getting that across.
Yep. And again, this thing highlighted by blue here, right? It's actually specifically what I put out of this original issue, right? The text of the original issue, and all the rest are just I defined, right? So that's the blue one is a copy and paste, and the arrows basically give you some sense why it's true and why this ChatGPT definitely know the context. Okay. So overall, what we got out of there, we see this. We see that significant amount of issues, right, that we categorize still belong to like XSS, which is okay since we have this legacy APIs and cookie-based REST and stuff like that. And again, like we cannot avoid the truth. The ground truth is there. Client-side issues still rely on XSS. It's still there. It's about 10% of them, and it is what it is. Then we have sensitive data exposure, which is 8% of the cases, which is still here, right? And API leaks of API keys, it's basically top 2 of the priorities nowadays. And again, I have all the statistical data and proof and ChatGPT on the top of that to make sure. And I tested this data again and challenged ChatGPT as many times as I was able to make sure that the data and the mapping is correct. Access control things, hello, BOLA and stuff like that, right? So that's 7% of the chances. Uncontrolled resource consumption, right? Kind of like logic bombs and stuff, 5% of the chance, stuff like that. The list looks definitely big, but again, like feel free to reach out to us and I will share the data. We're able to dig into it and make your own things. But our main thing here was, okay, why if we will categorize them and make our own top 10 list out of these issues. The first idea about this was to use AI, basically ask ChatGPT and use the bigger model for, because of the amount of data we have. I just scored the stuff by summary of this likelihood, right? From 0 to 9, right? Summarize them all, and then sort by amount of the summary. and then put the original CVE text and copy it to this machine. I definitely put more than you can find as a screenshot because I mean it's a huge list, more than 100 rows in that, and ask directly, could you please group this CVEs to kind of groups that represent API exploits to get 90% of coverage, right, for all the groups suggested by you, and also provide names and map these groups to CVEs to make my research on that clear. After 3 iterations, I finally got the list of 10, which I personally really like. The first time when I run this, I never mentioned what I want to do. I said, okay, let's do just top whatever, right? Just categorize that by how many classes or how many groups you want, nothing defined, right? Just do your best, right? And it did me 4 groups, which is that for me itself looks reasonable. Injection attacks number 1, access control and authorization issues number 2, resources and memory management issues number 3, sensitive data exposure and cryptographic issues, and then number 4. And easily we can get this. This 2 could be split by 2, also access control and authorization differently, resource consumption and memory management issues differently, and then sensitive data exposure and cryptographic issues differently. That's what I asked him to do. Ask basically to split these groups to get more groups, but increase the coverage. And it took me this. And then I ran a third time and said, look at this list again, and then probably add more groups, but make a list of 10 and increase the coverage to almost 100%, 99% of the list. Not 90% as initially, but more. And it gives me the list that I personally really like. First of all, it's well aligned to what I personally see as a security researcher and a guy who's basically doing this job with API exploits at least 2 years in a row when we first started with this threat stats report. As you know, we run these reports quarterly. If you never see this, just look at this on the website and download the latest report. It covers an entire 2022 in depth. I get injection number 1 for sure, and I completely agree with that. Then access control issues, then authorization issues, different thing, then resource consumptions, then cross-site attacks, additional group that this tool divides themselves. I never divided this group, right? I just tell them, so you know everything about whatever, just split it. Cross-site attacks related to browser-based APIs with the cookies, and it's number 5. Then resource management issues, I put overflows here by myself just to let you some know that a lot of APIs that we analyze still rely on this, and it's not only specifically related to binary APIs, but also examples like I made before, the Golang and other things can also do that. And again, APIs very often contain this, as we see. Sensitive data exposure and leakages, including API key leakages, still on the top, and we know how many of them, we know which kind of CVEs mapped, we know all the historicals and stuff. And this is the over 25 years. Definitely the next step for us is to split it by years and issue this monthly or quarterly or yearly, depends on like what's on the top now. But again, with ChatGPT, it's much faster than it was before, and the results much better as I see it. Then cryptographic issues, including certificates and lost keys and stuff like that, and hard-coded credentials, all the stuff. Then error and exception handling, definitely top thing. And if you ever try to find any bugs or run bug bounties, right, you know how it's important to don't put more data than you have to. And then race conditions and concurrency issues, which is perfectly aligned with what I see, since I see more and more often real world exploitation, and also the bug bounties specifically related to race conditions. It's so easy to abuse APIs with race conditions. So that's what we have here. And again, that's, as it for me, well aligned to my own knowledge, and also well aligned what's most important with the data that we grab. Basically 25 years, all the data we collect, including CVEs, including the bug bounties and this list, grab all together. So the same data in the most usable format here. It's in kind of ChatGPT API security top 10 list based on statistics we grab, based on the CVE mapping. Everything is super clear. You can look at this. We have the proof for everything here, including every single exploit and security bulletin mapped and attached here, and also perfectly made description by ChatGPT. So you can find what's there, which kind of API is vulnerable and stuff like that. As I mentioned before, we're about to announce and then launch and then publish the full-size white paper related to these things. So if you're interested in that, don't forget to sign up. I will show you the link, which we put to the beginning of this. Don't forget to sign up here, the wallarm.com/webinar/25 years in API security. And so we'll put your email here. We will follow up with a full-size research and a data source and basically everything that we grab. And definitely the ChatGPT top API security top 10 will be available with all the mappings and all the data we have. And again, let's just look at it and walk through injection attacks. No question. Number one, we have more and more things like that. It includes remote code execution and SQL injections. So many other injections happen in the world. Access control things, right? The basically improper access control, improper authorization, proper authentication, everything related to that. Authorization issues specifically related to user management, right? Privileges, access right, everything that lead to unauthorized actions. And 3 CVE mapped. Then cross-site attacks, XSS, CSRF, everything related to cookies and APIs, legacy APIs that still use cookies and using by browsers. And the top list, because we have them, we have the bug bounties, we cannot avoid them. We can be blind for things that happen. And again, well aligned with WAFs, so with WebSec, right, and AppSec. Then sensitive data exposure and leakage, including API key leaks, including this sensitive data transmission in a secure manner and everything related to this. Top list, and we all know that it's happened very often. Look at this most recent incident with the GitHub keys. Look at this incidents where APIs were basically integrated with the kill chain and used to extract keys and then reuse them. Memory management issues and overflow still on the map. So many issues. It could be memory leaks. It could be out of band read writes. It could be buffer overflows. And yes, so many APIs built and designed by basically by low-level code, and this low-level code contains this memory issues. It's a reality. And again, for this proof, we have all the data. You can download that. We have every single CVE mapped and CWE mapping as well. Resource consumption, right? Excessive consumption of system resource, performance and degradation issues, also known as logic bumps, still on the map. Very famous stints, whatever, the billion of flaws of XML attacks and stuff like that. Cryptographic issues, since I assume that we all agree that basically 90% of all this API data somehow encrypted, at least supposed to be encrypted, right? In many cases, I don't think that APIs with no crypto should be considered seriously. However, we still have them, this is for sure. And then error and exception handling, well aligned with what we say in bug bounty, well aligned with fuzzy and stuff like that. And definitely race condition and concurrency issues that easily lead to security risks and also API abuse. Attacks still on the case. And again, the list that we have here, built my machine that analyzed basically probably the most powerful AI exists and in public, right? Based on statistics that we grab and well aligned with CWEs that then allow to this job to be mapped and also be part of the CVE thing. That's probably it. Feel free to make screenshots here. Don't forget to put the emails to get your copy of the white paper, and also feel free to reach out for us for the data set. And then move to, sorry guys, the only thing here. So the other task that we try to run is to match this with OWASP, right? We all know that there is an OWASP thing. And OWASP is something unclear in terms of the CVE mapping. Some of these classes of OWASP mapped, some of them are not. Some of them, it looks like very broad and definitely some overlaps. For me, it's unclear how to map OWASP with real issues, but we asked ChatGPT to do so, and we instantly basically get the same. For OWASP API Security Top 10 2023, 80% of the chances when we launch this ChatGPT classes gives overlaps and intersection. 50% of 100 random runs, it gives different results. It means that we cannot use this data. In other words, it means that ChatGPT cannot score and categorize OWASP API security top 10 by classes, and standard deviation is about 5.8 out of 0 to 9 range, which is like nothing, right? We cannot use data. It's irrelevant. For OWASP API security top 10 2019, when it was closer to official OWASP top 10, that was a bit better, like 10–15% better, but still unclear and statistically irrelevant. Unfortunately, we were not able to use that. And it's basically, if I run this test first, I probably can consider that ChatGPT is just like wrong tool to do this job. However, after all this job that we clearly did was statistically proven results, including CVEs, 80% of the chances, like 0 deviation, right? And then 20%, 20%. Then ChatGPT 3.4 CVEs research that I mapped and manually checked, and then we aligned this with the CVEs we know, because we also tested this data and proved by the CV relation map, CW relation map. It's basically well aligned. And then we get in this. For me, it means that just OWASP is not perfect for the ChatGPT, and there is no strict criteria that ChatGPT will learn to categorize by OWASP API top 10. And it makes no sense basically to use the tool for this. And for me, I completely agree with that. So no question, OWASP API is definitely not something well aligned with CWE. It's not well aligned with industry needs. It's not well aligned with statistics, which I personally really worry about. So we get this. Here is a list of OWASP. The last thing of the research is done. Now move to Chris.
Yeah, so before we dig into the key results, we've got a few questions, and I want to go through them. So let's start with Alex. He asked, could you kindly explain in plain terms what we're looking at? So good question, Alex. So what are we asking ChatGPT to do? So Ivan, I'm going to take a stab at this, and then you can add more color. So basically, we started this journey by saying, can we look at what API vulnerabilities and exploits we've seen over the last 25 years? How would we gather that data and analyze that? And then, what can we learn from those data that would help defenders today? Well, gosh, you can't really do that manually. We certainly are doing so, as Ivan mentioned, with all of the threat reports that we do on a quarterly basis. We are going through those data that are more close to today, but when we start looking at 25 years, it's a little more difficult. So we brought ChatGPT into the mix. And then that spawned a bunch of questions. How valid is ChatGPT? What kinds of data do they find that we don't get by looking manually, et cetera? So the journey, as I said at the outset, strap in, because it's a heck of our journey from this basic question, what do we see over the last 25 years, to how do we leverage this information in 2023? So I hope, Alex, that helps you a little bit. Ivan, anything to add to that?
Yeah, you're right, Chris, right? First of all, we analyzed pretty much everything we were able to get out of this public space. All the CVEs, right? We analyzed them all to extract API-specific bug bounties as well. We searched them basically by regex, by examples, by also kind of keywords, just to get as much as we can. As you can see, we also grab some legacy stuff and web stuff just to don't miss something, and then we clean it up. This is for sure. The data set, just feel free to ask, we can share that. If you know any other exploits that not in the part of database, I will be surprised, but again, it's all up to you. Feel free to check our data and challenge the data sources. Thanks vulners.com for this API for the data, because we use their API to grab all of this. The other thing that we have to mention, how to use them right now. I think that the best use to use it right now is to look at this list of the issues we collected as a ChatGPT API security top 10 and walk through your APIs and check if they're vulnerable for that. Check for injections further, check access control issues, and check authorizations, and check for the cross-site attacks if your API is using cookies, and forget about that. If not, sensitive data exposure and leakages, including API security, API key leak leaks. And then memory management and issues, if you have a binary API or binary web server, and you have to check about that. Resource consumption, logic bombs, cryptographic issues, and data encoding and encryption. Check errors and how you handle them, and then raise conditions for sure, and concurrency issues in this case. And to get more about the things, you can just easily look through this CVEs, because CVE, it's a well-defined structure with all the details, with an exploit examples and stuff. And also follow us, since we will issue the full-size report with the white paper and the detailed explanation of every single class that the ChatGPT grew for us, with the real examples and reference to the real bug bounty reports that give you some sense how it was actually in real life as well. Just follow us.
Yeah. So basically the net here is we've got a new framework for how you should be thinking about your API security based on 25 years worth of data, leveraging the ChatGPT tool, which our various statistical tests suggest is a good way of going about this analysis. And by the way, a heck of a lot faster than doing it manually. And will allow us to also, stay on top of things as we move forward. And then you can start to work through your issues leveraging this list. So I think that's a very valuable thing to be thinking about as part of your vulnerability management program. So let's move on. We have another question. Somebody said, interesting use case for ChatGPT, but he or she, what the number, how many false positives did we encounter in this research?
What do you mean like false positives? We get the data from CVE and bug bounty, so there is now false positive on it. If you count false positives by, let's say, CVSS scoring or CVE, we have this data, right? For the false positive of CVSS, we have this. If we count false positive in a score, you will see that 20% of the data set that we scored by ChatGPT gives different results, and here is the difference, right? From 25% to like just 100% couple of times over the 12,000. That's the thing. It's really about like how to define false positive. We never analyze false positive at all. It means it's like false positive exploits, right? We analyzed only CV data, which trusted by default, right? And then as an exploit data, right? And bug bounty reports that was closed as relevant means checked with them. I don't know how to explain false positive in this case.
Yeah. So it's based on known data, and the assessments that we're looking at provide us an understanding of how close ChatGPT comes to what human people have come up with, but also suggests, maybe there are reasons why ChatGPT came up with a different answer, and those might be worth additional effort. But on the other hand, if that's not in your environment, why worry about it? And I think that is a good segue into another question. Is data poisoning attack an issue here? So I'm going to take a stab at that, Ivan. I think basically leveraging data that comes from the CVEs that are published by NVD, et cetera, and our partners at vulners.com. I don't think that data poisoning is a huge issue at this point. Of course, as we move forward in this beautiful new world of AI, who knows where that's going to go? But at the moment, I don't see that as a big issue. What do you think, Ivan?
The thing here, right? And again, like we score by CVE, the data poisoning itself, it's a kind of like the high level impact, right? It's kind of attack, and CVE, it's a weaknesses, right? All the time, you can use so many weaknesses to make the data poisoning as a key result. And I don't think that it's basically aligned. So many things here are like data poisoning. And usually it's considered an injection, by the way. That's why it's on the top if you want. But again, like I think that we have to discuss the particular case rather than data poison as a term, since the term is broadly defined for, let's say, an impact. And here we discuss vulnerabilities and risks groups. that for me, it should be the part of injection for sure. What's next?
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's in keeping with our data analysis, manual data analysis of 2022, the threat stats reports that Ivan mentioned, what we're seeing from a manual perspective definitely suggests that injection is the #1 thing to be thinking about. And again, if y'all been following the OWASP, you'll see that that currently is #8 on their list and actually disappears in the 2023 proposed list. So yeah, something to be thinking about. Let's see. Lynn asks, I didn't catch the main variance between ChatGPT and the manual approach. Can you briefly explain the additional or different items that ChatGPT caught? So I'll start by saying, I think the big thing here is we started this process by saying, you know, can we look at 25 years worth of API security and start to gather some insights from that? And in order to do that, we leveraged ChatGPT. So I think that's point #1. But what else would you add to that, Ivan?
The same here, right? We're doing this research manually year over year, and we issue this report, basically API threat stats reports. The first one we did in 2022, the first quarter. We're doing this quarter over quarter with manual in-depth analysis of exploits to make the system, the volume itself works better, and then also to be aligned with the cutting-edge exploits. However, we don't have enough of time to walk through 25 years of this exploit, and then we decided to use the ChatGPT as an AI tool that can help us. But before using that, we tested this for the like by statistics, and then we make sure that we can do that.
Yeah. Alrighty, we have a few more minutes, so keep the questions coming before we move into the conclusion here. But someone asked, well, how different would the results in the data be if it was restricted to 5 years instead of the entire 25 years? Wouldn't
follow us, subscribe for, put your email, subscribe there, and we will make this year over year, quarter over quarter, and other things specifically related to this, because our main idea and the main goal to make this list as close to the reality as we only can. So follow us and don't forget to put your email, and we will send you the full white paper with the research split by years and the dynamic of this ChatGPT top 10 list over years, specifically for API security.
Yeah, I think it's a valid question, but I think the point that we're trying to get across here is that what we've demonstrated here is that you can leverage ChatGPT to understand the current state, and that as we go forward, when you see our reports and look at our tools, etc., you're going to see that information put into our outputs. So hope that answered that question. We've got a few more questions here. Let's see. Someone asked, will the presentation be shared? Yes, we will share the recording of this discussion plus the presentation. And as Ivan has mentioned, if you go look at the slide #3, there's a link to sign up to keep abreast of changes as we put them out. So really encourage you to sign up there, and we'll keep you informed. So another question here, how has OWASP indicated any interest in using these results to improve their go-forward categorization? I'll start by saying that we've certainly working with the folks at OWASP. They're certainly doing really heavy lifting in trying to understand how to put together a good security framework. But I think you can gather by the chart that Ivan was showing on slide 27, I believe it is, that 26, our list is different from what OWASP has. It's not to say that you should throw OWASP away, but our data, as we're making the point, is based on or our list is based on actual data that we have a good amount of trust in. So hope that helps. We're getting close to the top of the hour, so I just want to kind of, everybody's been looking at this slide for a while, so I'm not going to belabor the point. We've seen growth in API exploits. We've been talking about this for the last year and a half, so that's not a surprise. Maybe the big points that might come to a little bit of a surprise to folks is that ChatGPT seems like a pretty good tool to accurately score exploits, both from a CVSS perspective and a CWE perspective. And it looks like a really interesting tool for us to use going forward to try to understand the current state of API security and how that will inform your vulnerability management and security, your API security platforms and efforts. So keep that in mind. If we go to the next slide, I promised you a second advert before we quit. Just to let you all know, in case you didn't, Wallarm has a complete API security and application security platform that we are leveraging these data to continue to advance our capabilities. We provide real-time API threat prevention, so not just detect, but also prevent, all in one platform. We've talked a lot about security testing. We've talked a lot about leak management. I believe that was number 3 or number 4 on the list that Ivan was showing earlier. So a lot of the capabilities that we're seeing in the data are reflected in the tool that we have for you all to put into your production environment. So with that, we have just one more minute left. So let's go to the next slide. Just to reiterate, follow us on LinkedIn. You'll see as we put out more information, you'll see that there. You can also subscribe to our newsletter and blog posts and so on, where we put kind of fast react information. If you want to follow the threat stats reports on a minute-by-minute basis, we have the API threat stats group on LinkedIn, where we post all the data that we're gathering. And then finally, as Ivan has mentioned, we have the 2022 report available right now. Some of y'all probably were on the webinar back in January or February, sorry. We also do the quarterly reports, and in fact, I'm working on the next one right now. So sign up, lots of information to help you design and put into action your API security programs, and we're here to help you. So with that, let's go to the next slide and just remind everybody that we'll be at RSA. So if you want to talk to us in person, want to see our tools in action, come on down. We'd love to have you. We'd love to talk with you. And by the way, we're doing a cocktail party with our friends at D3, Elastic, and Microsoft. So, if you'd prefer to talk to us over a libation, meet us there. So with that, thank you very much for your time and attention. Ivan, just incredible research and effort there. Really appreciate that. And if we didn't get to your question live, we'll try to follow up with you afterwards. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks everyone for joining, and special thanks for everyone who shared the link during this event with colleagues and friends who's interested in that. And as you all know, this recording available right after this event directly on LinkedIn. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn as well, and be in touch. Thanks everyone, and have a great day. Bye guys.